I think agentic AI will be very fast in terms of changing our lives. I think it's becoming already very scary because it can do things that you cannot maybe comprehend. All it takes for you to find that download link and download it, and then you might have a bombshell moment.
Yeah.
And that really hit, home. So I think everybody should think about that, because this is a different type of giving away your data. AI robotics seems to be the forefront of AI, the AI race, international AI race now. And that's really putting AI in the physical space, which becomes really scary for me.
Song, good to have you back.
It's amazing to be back.
So you were number one, you
Yeah.
were the first.
Yeah.
We've come a long way since then,
Yeah.
had all sorts of interesting people.
Yeah.
And this one's going to go out on Bank Holiday Monday. It's a holiday in the US as well, I believe, when this comes out. I can't remember exactly how long ago it was we did the first one.
It felt like a long time, yeah.
Well, in the world of AI, it was
Yeah,
probably
that's right.
a couple of centuries ago, it seems. So what has happened since then, which was only, I don't know, 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
It really felt like eternity, and because AI is all over the news. It's what you read, obviously, it's what I think about and talk about all the time. And it's quite interesting, I think I mentioned this in the last time I came. I used to be this nerd that only has visibility, within my own research community. And then since the first video, thanks for the invitation, by the way. So since the first video, I have old friends that I've lost touch, for a while, coming to me saying, "Look, Song, I've watched that video," and so on and so forth. So, and then obviously, is this different professions, different industry I engage with, and that has grown as well. So, I think that speed that we talked about, that the progression of AI, has only accelerated. So that's number one, right? And different parts of the world, different industry, they start to really think seriously about AI and really begin to think about the inner workings of AI. And this is really what I care deeply about. That people need to know, how their data is used. Yes, not in a really deep technical fashion, but intuitively, so they can make, well-informed decisions on how they want to engage with AI. And yes, so it has been busy. And another aspect I want to mention is it seems to be more politics, becoming part of AI as well. Because you see world leaders, you see AI being used as almost as a weapon, something that is very important to the future of countries in the way they want to progress themselves.
Well, this is a good point, because we've had obviously many people. You've met many of them as well, and we've had the opportunity to really reflect upon many different perspectives from many different walks of life, and looked at it from a security perspective, looked at it from a psychological perspective, looking at it from an education perspective, and numerous others, even recently Dame Dawn with from a data center perspective. And what you begin to realize is this has many, many, many touch points. So the amount of energy consumed, how does it affect the grid? What are the implications on that? Education, is it good? Is it bad? What are the consequences of effectively taking out the element where people learn knowledge by practice, by going through things, reaching a conclusion for extreme convenience? Is that artificially taking away the value of education? Then really begin to uncover what is happening with data, how much data we've had taken from us already, or how is it being used? All of these aspects, and I've heard the term the AI arms race,
Yeah.
and every country's potentially out for themselves.
Yeah.
And when you begin to look at the ramifications of it, the need for data centers, the need for tech to get out there, on the other side of that, when you really begin to understand it, I think it is becoming more prevalent in the public domain. And an example of that, we had an IP lawyer on here, and he was raising the alarm a long time ago. But if it's being used more and more, which it is to a dramatic extent, there's a huge risk from a personal perspective, from a business perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
How could you explain that in a bit more detail, cohesively?
Yeah. So that public awareness, that was really great to see. And then the videos podcast that we had on this channel, they're amazing because it's unique in terms of the breadth of professions that it covers in a different industry, different sectors. Just that's amazing. So I'm very thankful, and then also I really appreciate, that this broad spectrum of opinions, which then help to propagate AI literacy, I think, because you really want to put AI in particular domains for people to really understand, because that's how, people from that profession think. So that I think that has really helped, and then is really, like I said, good, and also very comforting for me to see that people are starting to talk about the important things that we mentioned. We mentioned sustainability, the amount of compute that was needed, and in terms of electricity, and then, what it does to the planet. And then there was also in terms of privacy, data, which you mentioned. And then in terms of how the multinationals, very few selected companies that has been there from the day one, having access to your data, and to now. So let's just focus on that data point that you mentioned. It has always been a concern, always been, in public discussion, people thinking about, what should be used, who has what. But I think that's that's your privacy. Yeah? So I think that boat might have sailed. Now, this is just my personal opinion. I mean, I think you just give that example, prior to the start of this, they all have this option of download all your data that, a certain company holds under your name. And then all it takes for you to find that download link and download it. And then you might have a bombshell moment.
Yeah.
And then that will really hit, home.
We could give an example of that. I mean, we discussed privately what that meant, because I did it recently, as you just said. But give an example, and from now, rewinding back with the younger generation, possibly from since they were born.
Yeah, that's right. And then think about it. So is the public perception of how data, the privacy, and that has evolved over the years, right? So you can imagine the first time you log into fake Facebook, have you ever thought about your data might be used to train AI models? No. And then nowadays, if you think about, every internet web page you go to, you have to click the accept or decline cookies. So was that a thing, like given 2 years? No. And then let's not forget about legacy data that you have been providing. And then I think you'll find, if you download your Google data, your metadata and Facebook data, what you find out is the early data that already captured a lot of your private information that you might not cared about back then, but they might be used.
So could that be looked at then, saying why is it such a few number of companies have been able to excel with training foundational models?
Yeah.
And to bring some context to the conversation, based on everything that we've seen in the last 5 or 6 months, there are some key topics. And I think DeepSeek was interesting because it sort of bucked the trend. But again, going back to the political point, and I'm going to bounce around to different things, but if we're to put some rational connection to the logic, NVIDIA is required. The powerful GPUs for foundational model training. Foundational model training requires immense amounts of data, but only a handful of people have that data, but we can now allude to find out how, why, and who, including, tag your friends when you're out at a restaurant, tag this, tag that. That's the process of metadata, effectively tagging, which is very important. Otherwise, AI couldn't possibly understand what it's looking at. So it understands by having training. So effectively that, in many ways, automated training data going back a very, very long time. So a handful of companies have that scale of data. Other systems, which you didn't know would ever be used for AI, have been performing functions on the millions. And you can get onto TikTok soon to really explain how that's important. So a handful of people have the resources, which obviously do require the data centers, massive compute power, and given it's getting politicized, it then became illegal to sell NVIDIA chips to China. So China then had to figure out a way to be hugely more efficient. And then you can look at the capital side of Silicon Valley, huge amounts of money. If you have huge amounts of money and you have a political race to move forward very, very quickly to get results, you probably aren't looking for efficiency, because efficiency requires a circumstance where you have to work 5-10 times as hard because you don't have the resources. So the act of stopping one thing 6 months later probably created that one thing, which is the embargo on chips, which then created a net result to show that actually it's far more possible to do things efficiently. What's the perceived threat in the public domain? They're stealing your data, and that's a security risk. Well, isn't that what everyone's doing? So suddenly, these decisions have led to consequences to put out into the public domain. What data? Where did it come from? And how can we trust things that we don't think are AI? Is that an accurate connection of all of the dots, where it's self-propagating situations and circumstances, but leading to a public awareness on, hold on a second, well, this didn't just happen.
Yeah. It did do something good, because it did put AI at the center of all mainstream media. And then it did help to raise public awareness, which is the unintended positive consequence of all of this. And then, yes, and then people are starting to remember, we talk about the 3 pillars of AI, right? It is the talent, the compute, the data. And then people are talking about all 3 now. So, the data we start to talk about, right? And then every country is now thinking about data sovereignty, how they can make sure, important data do not leave their own data fans, if you like, right? And then compute, that's like I said, for example, US and China, they have been really, the GPUs is about that compute infrastructure. How many GPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, each country has, and so on and so forth. And then the talent, I think 50% of all AI researchers are Chinese. So I think all of that, and then if you think about DeepSeek, if you think about TikTok, it tells me that everybody should just play along. And then let's really explore this, collaboratively, and think about, how to make AI more democratized, make AI more unbiased, and share, and other than compete. Because if you compete, then the data becomes silos. Then the model become more biased.
Well, this is a really good point, and it's, I think if people can have a framework to think about things, and we're seeing things that we can now recognize. If you have an open model, and if we look at the concerns that have been raised very heavily now, even if it, I'm a lawyer working on a particular case and you're the lawyer at another law firm on the other side, we both use one of the popular large language model services.
Yeah.
And I ask the right questions where there's been integration into commercial products, but that model is effectively still the same model. I could find out your work, or there's a high risk that your so-called confidential work, if I know the right question, well, your work is going to the same place as my work is going. So there's a huge security risk. It's a data seepage, but on a global basis, which is not in many or any people's interest. So what is the opposite of that? Well, the opposite of that, when you term democratize, I think most people would initially look at that, well, that sounds very political, democratize AI, but what it means is that you have the data sovereignty, that you can have it within your domain, and that doesn't leave your domain. And if you look at then the GDPR, you look at the numerous rules around, then we've even had lawyers literally say it's against the law. The laws are in place, but for some reason these laws seem to have been, don't worry about it, it's AI. It's a kind of craziness that the subject matter experts are looking at it, pulling their hair out, going, why are people not understanding this?
Yeah.
But when you begin to realize that and you can frame it in the right way, then it's really creating the conversation that the general public can understand. Is that what's happening to my data? Is that what's happening? Well, what's the opposite? What's my choice? And I don't think we've been offered many choices.
Yeah.
So it begins to show us the future of where AI can go, or needs to go, but a need needs to be understood before it can be wanted by the masses. They've got to understand there's the problem before they can really engage with understanding a solution.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this is a nice jingle, jongle, jangle, and you go, I have no idea what one of those is. Yeah. But when it becomes more apparent, well, this is what's happening. Do you find that acceptable? No. Okay. Now let's have the next discussion, and people can engage more. So I think that's a hugely important point, setting the premise for what does democratized AI mean? Where are the examples? And if we look at I wouldn't say rhetoric, maybe that's too of a loaded word or expression for it, but the allegations one particular CEO of an AI company made towards DeepSeek was calling the pot kettle black, and just going, oh, hold on a second, you work the same way. And then the public are realizing, well, he's accusing them of that, they're accusing that of that, but all of that is our work, our data, our lives. So what's going on here?
Like I said, I might be overly negative on the data and boat has sailed, but I think it's been decades now that this has been the case. And then you do think for law firms coming up with legal contracts, using whatever AI model that they use, you do think about where all that data come from. And let's give a very good example. So AI does really well in terms of generating text, right? And then you see, the last, since I was here, a major race has been along the lines of AI coding. So how AI can be a top programmer, essentially replacing the job of programmers. So why, the AI capabilities for programming has really evolved really rapidly? It's because of data. Because in the programming world, there's a lot of millions lines of really good code. And that's largely thanks to the open source community. Thanks to Linux, open source. I mean, even Microsoft have released some of their early source code. And all of that data has contributed to the, evolution of AI for programming. So the data is really behind everything. And then,
well, it's had a big drive towards agentic AI as well.
yes, absolutely, yes. But this is very much related to AI programming. So AI for programming, AI generating code is basically AI that can code and therefore can act. Because you can imagine that things on your phone, that's because there was a programming team working on it, telling it, how this program should interact with different servers, and then to do different things. And now the AI can do that. And then they can talk to other AIs to achieve even more complicated tasks. So, in the digital space, I think agentic AI will be very fast in terms of changing our lives. So maybe the next time I come back, give it a few months, I think the trendy topic will be agentic AI. And then another thing that's really emerged, I think I was here last time, was AI robotics.
Right.
Which seems to be the forefront of AI, the AI race, international AI race now. And that's really putting AI in the physical space, which becomes really scary for me already. Because you think about AI is just that clever, really clever friend. Agentic AI will be, it used to be just one clever friend among my circle that I call all the time if you need help. But now that clever AI friend is a large proportion of people, utilities, or surrounding me, and then they can interact. And that concept, I think, is becoming already very scary, because it can do things that you cannot maybe comprehend. And then this is going into the matrix moment almost, where then it we start interacting the AI agents, and they might achieve things that it's not been created before. So, but that's in the digital space. And if you think about the physical space, if you put AI on a robot, a human, a drone, then it can do physical damage. It can perform physical actions. And then I just feel like, the regulations, even thinking about the large language models, they're not even there yet. And then now the technology has really evolved at speed that I think is faster maybe than what we discussed during the last podcast.
But there's an interesting component to that. And again, the more we've spoken to people, the more, given the nature of people that we get, tend to be subject matter experts. And if we look at the premise of data being populated, the agentic AI being very good within the code space and traversing existing infrastructure, creating new infrastructure, but all being connected, that still doesn't include private data sets, which are not out there. It's still using, and Google has changed quite dramatically and continues to change dramatically. If you don't trust the core data, then it's a very dangerous foundation. Now, it's a way of presenting an outcome which may appear, I think you've said this before, plausible, but it's not verifiable. But if you can never trust where it came from, because it could be from Wikipedia, it could be from some press article, which, again, there's a complete lack of trust.
Yeah.
And the more open that it is, the more subjective it becomes. We know a lot of things are trained on social media. I just see that as a huge issue, that moving forward in time, if you map it to human relationships, we don't really trust strangers. It takes time to build up trust. And the relationships that we have as humans, as creatures, we like people, we dislike people, we understand, we bond, we form relationships, we have discussion, and that's taking humans out of that, or trying to say AI is going to do that. That I'm not seeing any evidence that that will be the case at all. I'm seeing, in fact, the opposite to that. That subject matter expertise, years of experience, where relationships are formed, where people can observe and understand the nuances, even tiny facial expressions. There is a massive amount of communication, which we have, even body language. There's an entire universe of data that is not being sensed at the moment. It's not being appreciated. It's not being understood. And we're rushing forward in the world, and we're hearing a narrative, AI is going to do this, AI is going to replace the jobs. I just don't see that happening at all. All what I see is things becoming extremely average, at which point, even if you look at a football league, the winner tends to outperform other people. If everything just becomes homogenized and the same, then everyone would finish mid-table, and there wouldn't be a winner or a loser. There are people that don't respond well to things, or teams, which you could look at organizations. And the personalities of individuals, some people are born to be on stage. Some people are great at understanding how teams work. Some people are incredible thinkers, solving complex problems in ways. I mean, we discussed when I just got back from Cannes, and I had observed things which had nothing to do with the film industry, but I was able to observe and see, and then use different things in life, different experiences, and come to conclusions which I would never have, AI wouldn't have seen that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being very generic on things, but the future of how things probably will go, and has to go in certain aspects. I think we're only probably hearing 10% of the value that people are claiming is 90%.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, first of all, I mean, there's definitely hope. I think we've been concentrating on we've been criticizing, AI in terms of the negative impacts it might incur. But there's positive down the line. I mean, this democratized AI that we talked about is private AI that can really serve you, and it does that in a ethical manner, where then your data do not ever leave your laptop. You have great control. You can set the tone of AI. You can set boundaries of where it should and shouldn't act. So that's what I meant by democratize, i.e., that control, that accessibility.
So even as you said that, so for terminology, subject matter expertise, you're a subject matter expert on your life, as each of us are on our own. So to make the decisions that we choose work for us is subject matter expertise with control, without leaking our data and our decision making and our private data out. So I think in many ways, where I'm describing what we see as the popular narrative, and to truly understand that, so that we can be open to what the opportunity is for things which are fantastic. I mean, scale and efficiency, democratization, I'd imagine there are many things that we would prefer could just be done, even learn and engage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then note, we talk about data, we talk about how your data is in the public domain, but we're not talking about 100% of your data. You control your data, and there are data that's never ever left your body, your physical self. There's data that your feelings, your intuition, none of that is anywhere near the large models, right? And then if you think about it, that's the most precious data you have, is your experience, how you reason, how your the logic works, your wealth of experience, how you conduct multimodal reasoning, and none of that is even remotely achievable by AI models nowadays, right? So, but there's also the fact that every time if you talk about human AI relationship now, this is the AI models, whatever model you fancy, and let's face it, most people are using AI now, and then this is you, and the data transfer has been this way.
Yeah.
You might get 10 pages of a strategy document after 10 seconds of prompting the AI, but then it's what you, from your 20 years of experience of how that strategy document should cover, what it should entail, what is the strategy that.
So it's who's prompting who.
That's right. The data transfer has been this way. Now, this is another dimension that people, I think, since we talk a lot about data, right? And I think just maybe one more, which is very important. Previously, the data prior to AI has always been raw, unprocessed data. This is your photos. This is whatever clicks that you performed. So they're like raw data that maybe doesn't mean much. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can do recommendations, but it's still quite rudimentary in terms of what those data can achieve. But now, because of this prompting, you're really thinking about you're injecting your domain expertise, your life experience, your networks, the data that's implicit to you, that defines you, one way to the models. So I think everybody should think about that, because this is a different type of giving away your data that's more you than prior to the AI models.
So if we're going to be giving people hope of what can come,
Yeah.
and if we're going to be very positive and imaginary and share some visions,
Yeah.
to me, I would distill everything down, and the product we're about to release to the world based on the LGM is 100% trust, truth, accountability, understandability within massively scalable, hyper efficient, scalable intelligence, like a mind that never goes outside of the boundaries of your own domain. For enterprise, we're very focused, obviously, on enterprise, and understanding roles, responsibilities, who's trying to achieve what good looks like and doesn't look like, and effectively baking in the most true version of context that an individual within an organization, the function that they have, the responsibility to create immense scale, but at all points, every last thread of data is understood, verifiable as being trusted and true. To me, it's incredible what can be achieved by making something that previously just was not humanly possible, suddenly possible, to the betterment of the organization, people's safety, the ability for people to do their jobs, the ability for people to communicate, to work more harmoniously, to get better outcomes, right? And that's very kind of specific, but it could be applied in many ways. And that's the vision we're about to show the world is entirely possible, which again goes against the grain of, I think, a lot of what we're told, and I think addresses some problems head on in the business world. From outside of that world, from the human world, how would you communicate your vision of what is possible?
It's almost like parenting. You can think about multinationals, companies training AI models like parents of babies, of the models like their babies. If you keep feeding the babies truth, verifiable data, the data that can really, that's there, that's carefully engineered to help the betterment of humanity to achieve certain tasks, right? If you, like, from day one, you educate your kid that way, and you have a great kid, and that kid will grow up to do amazing things, but then if you don't, if you let data from the internet, and then if you don't control, what sort of access to information that your kids, have exposure to, then obviously, your child might not, end up, it might, diverting into path that you might not want them to do. So this is exactly the same as AI models now. So if we can verify the data as source, and then have a trusted framework around it in terms of training, in terms of data provenance, and then that AI model is almost the perfect friend that's has lots of integrity. When you're wrong, it'll tell you you're wrong, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong, and then if at times of needs, it really help you or companies to make the right decisions. Is always facts, that's not no hallucination. Then that's perfect, right? But then when you find the AI models that we have now out there, they all have this unconscious bias. Now, the unconscious bias might be intended, might be unintended. We don't know that. But then there is, because the way the data was collected, because the way the model was trained, it'll create different versions, or basically raise different kids.
So effectively, that there's a cultural element, there's a racial element, there's a political element, and this sounds quite obvious, and we can as humans interpret the impact and label it as such, but if you get predominantly white people images and you train on that, then other ethnicities, other colors, it's not going to do very well. So I'd imagine, depending where the model came from, DeepSeek is probably much better with Chinese language and faces, as opposed to American ones will be better at the data that it sourced as well.
That's the most obvious bias out there.
Yeah.
So it's the data, right? But if you think about it, the internet data is mostly, Western data. So there is already that bias. It doesn't matter, technically what you do with it. So, this is something we care deeply about. So, democratizing AI also, there's an element of inclusion in there. So how can we make sure AI benefits everybody equally? But let's face it, right now, it doesn't.
Well, I think it could be looked at, it works for some, but it absolutely doesn't work for others. It's equal in the sense that it can perform a function successfully, irrespective of the surrounding context. And at the moment, as you say, it's not equal and not inclusive in that standpoint.
So I think all those, every time I'm on this podcast, we talk about some amazing things about AI. And then, every time I just want to trigger thoughts, to make people think, more about AI. and not necessarily following what we said, but if it triggers a thought, I think it's good. I think today we talk a lot about data and the good and bad, and then what will be the ideal, fancy, the perfect model that you already described.
I mean, I think from a personal perspective, I love physics because it describes things. It has no opinion as such. It's describing what is, and it's a language to describe what is around us. If we can have that as a foundation, then art, then creativity, then music and passion and interpretation can sit on top of it. But if it's a very sandy foundation that can't be trusted in the first place, or is highly biased and opinionated, it's really, if we want people to think anything, I think, are you questioning things and do you trust
Absolutely.
the foundation? Because if there's any doubt, then whatever comes next could lead you down a path which is potentially dangerous.
Absolutely. So start questioning start thinking about data, the direction of transfer, where your data, where are you getting more data from the AI models? Or are you actually feeding something to it? And also start questioning. So I think human, me included, there is a certain extent of laziness, and then there's a certain intention to rely on something that's wiser than you. Always trusting a friend's opinion, a parent's. So that's human nature. But then that's dealing with human. We should not have the same mindset dealing with AI.
Especially understanding the origins. I mean, something Floyd, the former SS, said, AI presents the opportunity to make you a much greater version of yourself.
Yeah.
Wiser, smarter, more creative. And perhaps that's the view that we need to position the viewer, and for people to understand, instead of AI is going to take your jobs, for those who really embrace how to leverage it to become more open-minded, to create more, to facilitate the things which are potentially barriers as individuals and as groups because of the technical resource, the money, the time. If you can reach a conclusion quicker, to be more human more often and more capable with what is entirely exclusive to us as humans, then that could create an incredible future. And that's probably a very good way to look at AI and think, how can I become a better version of me in any function? Rather than AI is going to do it for me, how can AI work for me as in the inverse, so to speak?
Yeah, that's certainly the future that I want to portray. But then I think we look at a lot of the sort of like the negativity around it. But then we need to question that, and then so that we can we can draw a brighter future. And then maybe let's think about that a bit. Right? So what I think people should do, right? I mean, this is what I start doing now, is to start questioning. I think via questioning, you then can really leverage AI to help you to improve. But in most cases, people settle with the AI. It's almost like previously without AI, you had the norm, right? If you on on an average day, let's say you write a particular piece and then you think that's good, but nowadays the AI improved the norm. So because every time with the help of ChatGPT, you realize, oh, your writing is a lot better now. and then people are more comfortable with it, right? Because that's why they love AI, because now with AI, they can write a better piece every single time, quite consistently. But should we stop at that? Or should we really think about, oh, actually, that fact that in there, maybe I should check that number. Maybe this, logic that doesn't really hold. And then maybe via that questioning, you can better AI based on what AI has generated. And then that make you
You see, you just
learn.
hit upon, I think, the opening the door to why would edge-based democratized AI potentially be more powerful. Because you've just described the problem of it's convenient for people to reach a certain level of average. But if everyone's getting the same response, then
that's what's happening, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got to the same as everybody else very quickly. So it's convenient and it's plausible. But if you have your own AI and you're a writer, it's learning your style, your nuances. It is unlike anyone else. So yes, you can get the efficiency, you can get the value, but it's learning you, and it's a conversational element between your writing style ability and you're improving, but then it is by its very nature a highly efficient version of you becoming better and not open to everybody else, and you're not getting fed in from everyone else. There may be a similar start point, but you can evolve that. And then the same goes for music, the same goes for film, television.
That you.
Exactly.
Because,
I mean, I absolutely believe, having just been in Cannes and listened to a lot of people talk, the future of film and television, I think some people will lose work, because I think if you look at what CGI was, and Jurassic Park being a good example, when Jurassic Park came out, we know dinosaurs aren't around anymore, so it was obviously CGI and it was incredible. Now the CGI and everything, but we don't think about it. AI will become what CGI was around Jurassic Park, and AI will eventually become what CGI is now. But you know what you really need? You need a fantastic director who can direct a narrative, a cinematographer that understands the emotion of color, right, and puts his imprint on it, or her imprint on it. A great writer that understands narrative and communication and script and the human experience and is original. So the subject matter experts, the people who are now and have been, will always be the difference makers. AI will just sort the efficiency for them to interact, to do things at a fraction of the price, at a greater speed, but you still need the time.
Absolutely.
You interact, and again, that's another aspect that you're passionate about. Control. That's what that means, in effect.
So that personalization must happen locally.
Yes.
And then this is where then, part of the definition for democratization, right? So that needs to be accessible on your own compute, where the data never leaves. So that individual, the personalized AI model, that stays with you. So that's the key. And it's just coming back to your point of this, bring individuals out of AI models, and how human can leverage AI to become better human, our better selves. Imagine, say, 10 years from now, and if what we discussed wasn't true, i.e. everybody just reached the same norm. And imagine my kids, imagine the young generation that we care so deeply about. They grow with AI. If they always trade just the average as good, because people do think AI is good, it's because the AI average better than their average, and then they will just all reach this point. And imagine when end of university, they take the final exam, and everybody write the same answer to the questions. wouldn't that be a catastrophic, scary, reality to face in 10 years? And then to me, it would. But the what if then we really make people aware that people should change their mindset about how they should engage with AI, and then to really think, yes, AI is raised the bar, but I need to question it. I need to think about what's right, what's wrong, what's me, where's me, where are the data that's not in the cloud, that's not in the models, where is that? And then everybody become smarter self in 10 years, and then they'll do amazing things.
And also the deviation on life experience.
Absolutely.
And the reality is we all come from different places. Our life experiences are completely unique. And it could be because we suffered loss. It may be a passion for something. It may be our heritage, where our family has come from. It could be our socio-economic conditions. There are many, many different challenges. So to aspire to average, we don't all as humans live one experience. So I can't see that it would work ever. And in history of everything, 1,000 people starting in the same position, some people become successful creatively, some become successful financially. There's always individuality, which is a combination of all of these things. Now, it can provide, and I believe it will provide, an equalization of opportunity where people who otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn from great minds, to have the capability to achieve things because it was being prohibitive based on their access to certain knowledge or resources. But ultimately, people will be able to have much more of a fair chance to become successful in what they believe is successful. And maybe they'll build businesses as well, and those businesses will be able to be built and be successful, whereas they possibly couldn't have done it before.
Absolutely. So that's a really good point. So AI models now is a normalization. So each AI model has different normalization, and that's against creative individuals. That's against businesses, because every business, a successful business, would have a niche.
Competitive edge.
Exactly, that edge. That edge is not part of the normalization, because that experience, that know-how, that data has never left the minds of the people driving those businesses, has never left the hard drive that holds 20 years of data, because you've never uploaded that into internet. So how can we leverage that and then tailor that into AI models, and that can help that particular business, and then to help that particular creative?
It's capability driven. And I think that's the thing which is being missed out a lot, but that's where the value. And again, we've talked a lot of negative stuff, but the process of creating successful artists and hits is you address all the negatives. Because if you can understand the negatives, you can understand what is positive.
Absolutely.
And it's really going through the process of what doesn't work. Right, that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? That doesn't work. Right, what does work? And then you do less of what doesn't work, but you understand what does work, because it's usually diametrically opposed. So what's the opposite to leaking data and everyone using the same data? The normalization, as you say. Individuality. What's the opposite to extreme security risk? Security and privacy. What's the opposite to lack of opportunity? Arm people with the capabilities which otherwise wouldn't be available to them, so that they can have the opportunity to succeed. There's no guarantee anyone will succeed in anything.
Yep.
There's no guarantee of hardly anything in life. But if you've got the opportunity, then I think that has got to be better.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, AI did offer a leveling field, if you like, a sort of like an equal opportunity for most now. Because, I mean, think about learning. Then you don't really need to learn a particular way. If you didn't like what your professor said in the lecture theater, then you ask AI differently. And then it might give you an answer that oh yeah, actually I understand now. And then now everything makes sense. So is that...
But you've just said something really important there as well. That exact context, we all learn differently.
Yeah.
The fact that it's all been heavily about words and people saying, well, the large language models are going to solve everything. Well, you're one of the world's leading experts in vision AI.
Yep.
I learn by seeing things and building pictures in my mind. I could look at a book for ages and it doesn't go in. So how I learned, but I know other people that learn through hearing, through listening.
Absolutely.
And Floyd said to me recently, he says, I've observed you. You speak out loud and you'll say things and ramble on a bit because you're thinking as you speak and you're hearing what you're saying and you're assessing things and calculating thoughts and you're actually thinking out loud. We have numerous friends, they do the opposite. If you ask them a question, there's silence. And you can see they're considering, they're doing everything internally, then they'll come up with a conclusion. We're all so different. So multimodal AI is absolutely important, but that's because it's important to the individual.
That's right.
Individuals learn in a different way. Again, if we've homogenized everything, say, well, here's what you've got to use, that may not be appropriate.
Yeah. So multimodal is actually one of the recent advancements of AI that we haven't really talked about, and it should have been, we could have talked a lot more about multimodal AI. But actually, again, this justifies, this highlights the problem of the AI is only a very small part of human. So text is not the only way of communication, right? We communicate via eye contacts, body gestures, micro expressions, like you mentioned, drawing, that visual memory, all of that. So we should really think AI is a capability that empowers us to do better on certain aspects, but then is not even close to what human can do. And especially if you think about the sensory that we have, we can touch, we can taste. Visual AI can now help people to, help AI to see. And obviously there's audio, hearing, and then there's text, speaking. But then we use more than that, and then we use them synergistically to make decisions. And that's what, that's why the push behind multimodal AI. So obviously, researchers and companies, they realize the power of that. But then even that is limited. It's because there is domain gap between the different modalities of data. So a picture speaks for 1,000 words. Yeah. Are you going to type 1,000 words to generate the image on Midjourney? No. So there's a data gap there. And then there is ambiguities in text. But then if you show somebody a picture, there's no ambiguities. That's why sometimes you show people directions, oh, I'm lost. And if you draw a picture, everything makes sense. So there is that domain gap that's very intuitive to us because we abstract information really well from multi-domain. I mean, over the millions of years that we evolved as humans. But AI doesn't.
And I think you've just hit on a hugely important point there. All of these instinctive things, the micro expressions, the reading of the room, the fashion sense, the mood and the emotion that comes through so many different elements. We're not even scratching the surface.
No, we're not.
But, and again, this goes, flip into the negative again. We're being sold the idea that it is. But the more people you speak to who are domain experts go, come on, that is just madness.
Yeah.
It's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Now, it gives us something to aspire to, but again, it gives a framework for us to think. And when we're instilled with fear, it's going to take you jobs, it's going to take you jobs. Well, what does it actually take? And it goes back to your point questioning. What does it take to form relationships, even within sales? Relationships of trust, communication, and it's two-way, it's observing. Yeah. Can I understand the problems that you face? Can I empathize with you? Can I communicate how we can help solve the problem? Can we discuss what a valuable transaction looks like? I mean, that's, we had CJ Wimley on discussing effectively the anatomy of a deal and all the particular phases, which incorporate psychology and an understanding and rationale and an analysis of figures, budgetary requirements, the value associated with it, and it's expansive. Yet to be told, oh, that'll be just replaced, it's not plausible.
For sure, we should be more confident about ourselves. So having, like I said, having lots of looks to be quite wise people in AI in the room doesn't mean they're wise. They're just talking the stuff they know the best.
And that's the key thing, isn't it? People tend to say what they know, but if you, having sat with lawyers and educators and people who taught children, and obviously you teach older people as well, but you have a son, so you know exactly what teaching someone young's like. Sports people, we've got some people coming on very soon who teach elite performance to NFL and Premier League players, and are using an element of AI to map things out and help create optimal performance. Looking at all of these things, there's so much more to it.
Yep.
And the key is we are far more capable than the limitations or the threat of the limitations that we're being told.
Absolutely, yeah. So we should elevate ourselves to a higher position, because right now it seems to me that it's the other way around. And then this really wise friend I can always call. All I need to do is pay a subscription, and then I can always get help. But really, how wise that friend is, it's the same thing, right?
I would love my AI Richard Feynman, but I think it goes into the vision of, and something you said before, over 10 years, what happens when AI could potentially be a companion to a child, let's say 1 million children. That same great original mind understands that individual, and it's a one-to-one relationship. So it understands its troubles, it converses, and that, like the AI Richard Feynman could understand me and develop that relationship, and I could discuss with him, and over a period of time, 10, 20 years, it's a different model to the one someone else has, and different to what someone else has, because it's a completely different bidirectional relationship. And then whatever type of person that, maybe you have a comedian as well. I'm sure some AI friends would probably be not well advised, but it's the choices, the variety, how to learn a sense of humor, how to learn to become a great producer in music. It's about the process. And that's a relationship over the time. The idea of a mentor isn't someone you meet once for 10 minutes. An apprenticeship would be effectively with a mentor over a period of years, and a transference of knowledge. But the apprentice would become
better,
like a Jedi in the end a Jedi,
Yeah.
Padawan. Yeah, so when they're a young Padawan, but it's the whole experience culminating with the transfer of knowledge in context leads to something where that individual is entirely autonomous in their own right, with their own personality, with their own character. They have been influenced positively by many people, but they are their own person, which I think is against completely the opposite to the narrative we're told. But I think we can create a future which could and will be, and I think people are beginning to see the value.
Yes. So that circles back to the first thing we mentioned. No, is I'm really glad that public opinion is changing. There's a lot more exposure on AI, the good and bad, but they all trigger thoughts, and then is this sort of discussions hopefully can help to spell some of those concepts a bit more for the public to reference to, and the more I think we trigger discussions, the better, because that's really needed. I think that's the best way to really sort of like peel the layers, and then really to have a deep dive into AI cannot do.
Well, I think next time we speak, we'll be looking back saying, well, here's now what is possible, and we'll see a trajectory.
Yeah.
Enough space between increments. We'll see a whole movement in the way things are going, both positive and negative. But in order to understand where we could go, which would be good, we need to understand what bad looks like too.
Absolutely.
So we can be empowered to make decisions and think about things to be aware.
Yeah.
So
we'll become better humans.
exactly. Brilliant. So, been a pleasure.
Cool.